Family is about acceptance. Team is about performance. So wherever you are on that scale, figure it out and then lead your team accordingly.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Helping with Dr. Richard Schuster. Food for the brain, knowledge from the experts, tools to win at life. I'm your host, Dr. Richard. Whoever you are, wherever you're from, and whatever you do, this is the show that is going to help you become the best version of yourself. Each episode, you will hear from some of the most amazing, talented, and successful people on the planet who followed their passions and strive to help others. Join our movement to get 1 million people each day to commit acts of kindness for others. Together, we're going to make the world a better place. Are you ready? Because it's time for your Daily Helping. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Daily Helping Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Richard, and our guest today is fantastic. His name is Jamison Carrier, and he is the founder of Team NavX, a leadership advisory and recruiting firm focused on helping organizations build high-performing teams through clarity, accountability, and execution. A media expert and sought-after speaker and advisor, Jamison works with leadership teams across the country, equipping them with real-world systems to improve hiring performance and culture. He's here today to talk about his newest book, Building a Championship Team, a practical guide to finding, recruiting, and developing top performers. Jamison Carrier, welcome to the show. It is awesome to have you with us today.
Dr. Richard, thank you. We're just grateful to be with you.
We're going to have a great time today, and I know we're going to have a lot of awesome things to talk about. And I do want to, of course, talk about the book. But before we do, I love to just find out what makes people tick. What's their why? I'm a psychologist. I can't help it. So let's jump in the Jamison Carrier time machine and take us back to some of those key moments that put you on the path you're on today.
I will go way back. If we're going to the time machine, we may as well go back as far as we can. I grew up in a home that was just full of faith and hard work. My dad worked in a factory, and I didn't realize at the time how outstanding it was that I never once heard him gripe about work or about having to go to work. He just loved to work, and he was grateful to be able to provide for his family. And so I grew up being taught that work was a good thing, and I enjoyed it. But I just, always wanted more. I got into the RV industry at a young age, and then had a desire to start my own business or own my own business, as I think, a lot of us have that. So I went out in 2006, bought a glass company, and of course, 2008 happened. And I look back at some of the mistakes that I made that went along with the economic downturn. And we had some success, but we had some failures as well. And the failures deeply impacted me. When you have people that you're responsible for as a team, it changes your outlook. And so, that was kind of a reset for me. And I started to learn that I needed to be a better communicator. I needed to make things clearer to my team. And, was fortunate to be on a ride with an RV dealer group. We had 50 dealerships. And when I started there, privately held, when I left, we were at 150, publicly traded. It was just an incredible opportunity for me to learn. And those things impacted the way that I look at leadership, about leading a team, and lessons that I learned through that period really have an impact on everything I do from day to day today.
And I know the book you've written is not your first book. So a lot of times, people write a book like, oh, I'm writing a book, but now you've done it again, right? So why this book and why now?
The first book that I wrote was a book called Syndromedy, and it's satire. And it was just really a way for me to get a book completed, get it finished, and get it out there. And, I've been writing books for about 15 years, just never finished one. So started a lot of books. But honestly, to me, building a championship team, that is my passion when it comes to business. And really, it doesn't even have to be business. If you lead a little league baseball team, then this book applies. It's any team. And so it's something that I'm passionate about. And look, I don't expect to be the next best-selling author. I'll give you an analogy. I'm from Indiana. We play a lot of basketball, and I love to play basketball, but I don't expect to get an NBA contract. Right? So same thing is true with book. Look, I'm not John Maxwell or whoever your favorite author is, but I have real principles that I've learned in the field, and I enjoy writing it. And so to me, building a championship team is something that can help people. And there are so many small businesses where people tell me again and again that the hardest part is building the team. How do you find the right people? How do you know who the right person is in that interview? And so to me, I wanted to get it out, but I also feel like it really can help people. And that's the most important thing to me.
Well, I love that you said this because, we're really not a solely corporate focused show, right? It's a personal development show, but building a team and leadership is something that's applicable no matter what walk of life you're in. I mean, a family unit is a team, right? So, yeah,
Yes.
this is something that's incredibly applicable. And, you were able to take a company that was an RV company and explode the number of dealerships you had and took the company public. So you obviously know more than a little bit about teams. And I know your expertise has been featured in a lot of places. So let's
And
talk.
if I can interrupt, I would stress on that. I was a small part of that. We had a huge team that was responsible for doing that. I don't take any credit for that, but being a part of it had such an impact on me.
Well, I think just the fact that you're framing it as you're part of this team, right? Like that's a team is not just one player, right? It's a bunch of people whose skills come together in a maximally optimized way. So let's jump into the tenets of the book. So start walking us through, Jameson, what the reader is going to get out of this book.
Yeah, so really it's based on clarity, and it is set up into sections where it starts with any team starts with finding the right people, right? So it's finding and ultimately developing top performers. So when we go to build a team, we don't just want good people. We want good people that are top performers. And one of the things I learned early on is that good people don't always make good team members. So early on, I hired somebody that was a dear friend of mine because I loved them as a person, and they are a great person, but that didn't translate to the skill set on the team that we needed to work. Again, if you're building a basketball team, you don't just want to put your best friends on there. You want to find people that are good at basketball and that also, have the mentality to work and do that. So our book is how to clearly define a position to start with. So we have what we call a map, and the map is the missions, the actions, and the performance. So it clearly defines here's the mission, and here are the actions that it takes, and the timeline that's attached to it. So that is your recruiting tool. So now when you're interviewing someone, you find that top performer, then you can ask those questions like, hey, one of the missions is this. Tell me about a time you've done that in the past. Tell me how you'd go about doing it in this case. So now you can interview to the position because it's clearly defined. So basic, but how often do we go about not doing that? And then now that map turns into a tool that we use throughout your time on the team where you're referring to it regularly on a weekly basis. Like, here's the map. Here's the actions I need to be accomplishing. Are we accomplishing it? Are we on track or not? And people need clarity. So that's really what the book does is explains how to set that up.
So I have a question, finding and developing top performers. And so with this map plan, I understand how you can develop the person over time and make sure that from a mission standpoint, that their experiences kind of match up so that the hire is cleaner. But it sounds like you hire the top performer or you find the top performer who fits into that mission. And I know this is going to be a little different industry to industry, but what's kind of the litmus test for you to determine if somebody is top performer in the first place?
Oh, I love that question because that's the key, right? So that when we find them in three sections of the book, find, recruit, and develop. Those are three sections. So to find them, first off, we find a lot of people through referrals, through LinkedIn, You can look at someone's LinkedIn account and see what their focus is just based on what it says about their prior experience. And there's this thing about having versus doing. Okay. So a lot of times when we look for people that have certain things, and having something doesn't necessarily equate to performance. Okay. So I can have a great education. That what matters is what I do with that education, right? I can have years of experience. I can have 20 years of experience, but what do I do with that experience? And so what the objective is to establish what have people actually done. What they have matters, but not near as much as what they have done. So in the interview process, you're able to break it down and you look, and like you said, it varies from, depending on what your background is. No matter what the position is, though, where do you rank in relation to two things? How is your performance in relation to other people who have the same position? So if there are 100 people that do it and you rank number 50 all the time, you're just not a top performer. That's okay, but you're not a top performer. So how do you perform in relation to your peers? And number two, how do you perform in relation to expectations? So throughout the interview process, we're like, okay, you've been at this employer. What were their expectations? And then how did you perform in relation to that? And that will tell you whether or not someone is a top performer.
Makes perfect sense. So using this methodology, we find, right? So that's the first part of the book. You have found your person. I find it interesting that there's a whole section on recruiting, because it would feel like finding and recruiting they're not exactly the same thing, but they're connected to each other. So, that's a piece that, at least in a vacuum, sounds kind of self-evident, but obviously it's nuanced. So talk to us about the recruiting aspect of all of this. So we found our top performer. You're confident that they have the skills. They're not a paper tiger. What's next?
Yeah. So when I first started writing the book, and I co-wrote this with Dominic Zappia, when we first started on this, 10 plus years ago, it had 5 sections. And so we kept condensing it down. We ultimately decided 3 was key, but I really wanted to separate find and recruit, because I can go out and find top performers, but if I can't recruit them and bring them onto my team, then it doesn't matter. You can find every top performer in the world. You got to get them on your team. They're going to perform somewhere. I want them on my team. So we separate that out. In order to recruit top performers, you have to have a place where top performers can thrive. You've got to have a place where it is a place that top performers want to work. You need to have a scoreboard in place that shows people whether or not they are winning. You need to have clarity in the role. You need to compensate them fairly and give them an opportunity where they can earn based on what they produce. So recruiting is, sure, finding is a part of the recruiting process, but it's not enough to find them. You got to get them on the team.
So there's a lot in there. Obviously, compensation's kind of the no-brainer part of this, but the scorecard is very interesting, or the scoreboard, I think you said. So talk to us a little more about that, because that's intriguing.
Yeah. So I would use the example. It's funny because I'm not really that big of a sports fan, but I'm going heavy on the sports analogies today. Forgive me for everyone else that would fit in my category and not really being a sports fan. But if imagine, like, say you have kids that play on a basketball team and they're on the high school team, they've made it to varsity and they're starting. And now you go to the next game and everybody's getting ready. They're getting ready to start and you notice something's missing. And you look, you're like, oh, they don't have a scoreboard in this gym. That's interesting. Like, why would they not have a scoreboard? Well, then you start digging into it and find out they're not actually keeping score. They don't even keep score in the game. How long would that game continue? How long would it be before those kids lost interest? I mean, in Indiana, the coach would probably throw a chair across the court.
I heard that's happened before in Indiana.
That wasn't over a scoreboard issue, but it could happen. It matters. And if you're a performer, people want to win. You wonder why teams have fair weather fans, because they want to be a part of winning. People want to win. How can you win if there's no scoreboard? So you need a clearly defined scoreboard. This is how you win. And then show people exactly where they are so they know how they're performing in relation to what the expectations are.
And you show them this before they're actually on the team, because this is part of the recruiting section of your book.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I would tell you, top performers are drawn to that.
What else about recruiting would you like to share that you think people need to know that's more nuanced and maybe not so obvious?
Largely, the recruiting aspect comes down to the interview. The interview is so important. And so when I sit down with somebody, I've got them to that point where I'm going to sit down and have an interview. It should be at least 90 minutes. You should both be tired by the end of that interview because you're going to dive deep and really uncover things. And, there have been all kinds of tips and things on interviews, so many things that just really don't work. We want to see a history of, someone's performance and then their ability to get to the next level and do the same thing. Just because somebody's performed at one position doesn't mean they can perform at the next. So ultimately, it comes down to that interview and identifying the performance factors.
What are some of the pitfalls? What would you tell people to avoid to not cause that recruiting process to go off the rails?
I would say the number one thing that we do as people who are interviewing and looking for that talent is we fall for things that have nothing to do with performance. Lou Adler talks about some things. He says people that are affable, people that are attractive, people that are assertive, people that are well spoken, all of these things, we have biases with that. And as an interviewer, when we're in an interview and someone is very well spoken, that really can, make you think, I need to hire this person. Well, in some, that may matter, but just because someone's well spoken, it doesn't mean they're a performer. And so these are things that really have nothing to do with performance, but we get caught up in them. And so it's important that we ignore the things that don't matter and then focus on the things that do. I'll give you one more example. If you could take away one thing from today, this would be worth taking away. As humans, and you understand this, Dr. Richard, better than I do, and you could explain the why so much better than I do. But first impressions mean so much. That first impression. And so what we do as human beings is we schedule the interview, we walk into the, wherever we are to have the interview, and we immediately form an opinion about this person. It's the worst thing you can do. And so in our system, we have what we call the 30-minute rule. In the first 30 minutes, you are absolutely forbidden to form an opinion about somebody because it doesn't matter what happens in that first 30 minutes. You've got to get through 30 minutes of establishing a track record of performance before you can even consider making an opinion on somebody. And I think that's an area where, we're too quick to make decisions.
That's interesting. It actually plays a little bit against our biology. We have these things in our brains called mirror neurons, and subconsciously, those things are looking for things in our environment that are similar to us. So if a candidate walks in the room and he graduated from the same college that you did, or these other biases that you're not even maybe at a surface level aware of, your brain is telling you this is a cool person, right? So yes. I think it's very interesting that not that can't be overridden, of course, but I love that you have this conscious focus. Hey, no decisions for the first 30 minutes. That's really cool. No opinions in the first 30 minutes. Let's talk about the third section of your book, because I think this is probably where the meat is, right? It's developing talent, developing people so they stay and so they perform even at a higher level than maybe when they walk in the door. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. So, the first thing with developing is onboarding. You've got to start them out right. And in order to start them out right, we have to have a map. So, I refer to this map again and again. There are a lot of times there'll be people that I know, or maybe a client or someone in the industry that says, hey, I want to interview somebody. Would you mind sitting in on the interview and helping out? And the first thing I'm going to ask is, let me see the map. Well, we don't have a map. Well, give me a clearly defined, well, we don't really have that. Here's our I can't interview to that. I have to know exactly where we're going. And so I won't interview unless I have a map. But equally important, I won't bring somebody on board unless I have a map. It's got to be clearly defined. Here are the missions. Here are the actions. Here's how we get there. And so from day one, we have this map in place. And now we're going to keep score the right way. So have clearly defined objectives and know exactly where we are in relation to that, where they can know we got to have an accurate scoreboard. So in order to develop people, you have to have an accurate scoreboard. And then we're just given consistent feedback. You've got to have a schedule of how often you meet. We recommend meeting with direct reports once a week. And it's not an hour and a half sit down, but in 30 minutes or less, you can review the map, get caught up to where people are personally, and, work together as a team to get better. And then, of course, we believe in appreciation. That's one of the main things we need as human beings is just some basic appreciation. And so, we want people to have autonomy. So the map will show what needs done. It may show how it needs done, but the individual gets to determine how they're going to do it, and they get the autonomy to do things their way. So we believe in appreciation, giving that feedback, and then essentially it's not enough to bring a top performer on the team. You want to retain them, and you do that as we talked about earlier with fair compensation plans. And man, it just works.
So here the map and the scorecard or scoreboard show up again. We've talked about the feedback, that meet them once a week, honest feedback, appreciate them. What else is really different? Because a couple of those themes are showing up, right? The map and the scoreboard are showing up multiple places. What's a real unique piece in the development side of things that don't show up in those other areas?
I think both of those things, unfortunately, are unique. I mean, we see it in organizations again and again where people don't have clearly defined, we have no more than 2 missions and really no more than 3 actions for each one. So to break that down even more with the map, what we say is this, and I know I think you're asking me to get outside the map, but let me just dive a little bit deeper into it because we use what we call X marks. Everything has a bit of a navigational theme, but that marks, MARKS, everything needs to be measurable. Okay. It's got to be achievable. It needs to be results based. It has to be kept time bound, and it needs to be specific. So any mission, any action that you give me, if it doesn't meet all of those things, then it doesn't belong on the map. So how many times we say, well, yeah, you need to grow from here to here. Okay, but by when? So the map, the actions, they're telling what by when. If it doesn't say by when, then we don't have something clearly defined. So these are things that set us apart. Again, you can say, well, I gave them a job description. They know what they need to do. Do they? I mean, if you met with your team and your direct reports and say, what is the most important thing and what are the actions done to do that? And you silently wrote it down and they did, would it all line up? And unfortunately, in many times it does not. So this is what clearly defines that for your team. So it's measurable, it's achievable, results based, kept time bound, and it's specific. So that gives us that foundation that we're working on with the map. And then from there, we're measuring it. And then the consistency. We call it X marks because it's all about execution. And that's the part that so many people miss is, maybe they even define it, but do you meet on a weekly basis and touch base on that map and adjust it as you need to and help that person to develop and get to that next level? So again, execution, being with them every week and consistently going through it, keeping your map up to date.
And so, same question I asked you earlier, for this phase of the game, what are the pitfalls? What should we be avoiding?
Well, some people have said, man, it sounds like you're micromanaging somebody. Are you micromanaging? Top performers don't want to be micromanaged. Nothing could be further from the truth. What people want is safety. People want safety in their life. People want safety in their work. And so what this does is it gives them safety. The pitfall is anytime you want to try to micromanage somebody, you're going to run a top performer off. What you have to do is put this out there, let them bring it to you every week, right? They're bringing the map to you, but then there's safety and clarity. It all comes down to clarity. So if you don't have the clarity piece in it, that's going to be the pitfall. And then, again, just briefly, I mentioned appreciation earlier. Pitfall with appreciation is for me to just say, Dr. Richard, I appreciate you. Like, does that mean anything to you? No, it doesn't mean anything. As a matter of fact, you'd be better off not to say that than not to tie it into something. So why do I appreciate you? I appreciate you because you have a consistent podcast that you've put together for week after week after week. And I know it takes a tremendous amount of work. That means something, right? And so anytime you offer appreciation to a team member, the pitfall is just saying you appreciate them. No, you need to actually tie it to something. You better mean it. It needs to be meaningful, and you need to be involved enough with your team to know where they're making a difference.
That's great advice. I've loved this conversation because it's very clear, which makes sense as you've described your model and the acronyms, that everything is very action oriented, and these are all things that people can implement today, whether it's in their business or on their little league team, as you said earlier. So, Jamison, our time together has flown by. As you know, I wrap up every episode by asking my guests just this one question, and that is, what is your biggest helping? That one most important piece of information you'd like somebody to walk away with today? I know you already said one, so I'm going to put you on the spot and have you give us another one.
Here's what I would say. If you lead people in any place, anywhere, at some point, you need to make this decision, and this is in the book. There's a scale of family versus team. So in some businesses, they're a business, but they operate it like a family. And what I mean by that is, look, that's Aunt Betty. She's worked here for 30 years, and it doesn't matter what she does or whether or not she performs. She has a place here. She's Aunt Betty. The other extreme side of that, on the team side, is think of a fantasy football team. So if you don't do fantasy football, you get to draft this team, you choose these people, and then how they perform that week depends on how many points you get. You don't care how long they've been on your team. You don't care, anything about their personality. You don't care about the relationship. You just want to win. You just want points. A professional sports team is pretty far on this side. Some family businesses are over here. You've got to decide where you are on this scale, because that's how you lead a team. Look, a true team, you have each other's back. There's loyalty. You will fight for each other to win together. Family is about acceptance. Team is about performance. So wherever you are on that scale, figure it out and then lead your team accordingly.
Awesome. I love that. The book is called Building a Championship Team, a practical guide to finding, recruiting, and developing top performers. We'll have a link to that in the show notes if you want to pick that up. But if somebody listening to this is like, I love what is being said here today, where can they find you online and learn more about you?
JamisonCarrier.com.
Perfect. And we will have links to the show notes to that as well at drrichardschuster.com. Well, Jamison, this has been a great, informative conversation. I loved it. A lot of actionable stuff out of here today. Thanks so much for joining us on the Daily Helping.
Thank you, Dr. Richard.
Absolutely. And thanks to each and every one of you as well who took time out of your day to listen to this conversation. If you're inspired, if you're going to put your map together, go give us a follow and a 5-star review on the podcast app of your choice, because this is what helps other people find the show. But most importantly, go out there today and do something nice for somebody else, even if you don't know who they are, and post in your socials with the hashtag #MyDailyHelping, because the happiest people are those that help others.